The scent of jet fuel and dry air was finally gone, replaced by the familiar, slightly sweet aroma of his own home. A smell that was always inextricably tied to Leo. Elias stood by the worn leather suitcase, his shoulders heavy but his heart impossibly light. For 2 months he had been a ghost in the high, cold altitudes of the Dolomites, overseeing a complex engineering project that demanded every ounce of his skill and stamina. He had not chosen the work for the glamour of Europe. He had chosen it for the triple overtime and the promise of a clear, single path to redemption. That path, he knew, rested entirely on the items currently tucked away in the carry-on beside him. Leo, his son, his 16-year-old anchor, had spent the summer navigating the difficult, status-driven world of high school without his father present. Elias, divorced and co-parenting, felt the ache of absence like a phantom limb. He wasn't the kind of dad who could afford spontaneous trips to the coast or high-tech gadgets on a whim. His world was built on grit, calluses, and the stark reality of hourly rates. But this trip, this long, grueling project, had been different. It was a calculated sacrifice. A 2-month self-imposed exile that had cost him his weekends, his meager vacation time, and every single drop of his emotional reserve. He had promised Leo, not just to come home, but to bring back something extraordinary, something that whispered, "You are worth every sacrifice." The money he earned felt like blood money, paid for the deep, exhausting loneliness. But holding the sleek, expensive shopping bags in Milan and Dubai had transformed the pain into a blazing, proud warmth. He wasn't just buying things. He was buying back time, confidence, and a sliver of status for the boy he knew was struggling silently. Elias vividly recalled the moment in Florence when he bought the backpack. He had walked past the boutique 5 times, the price tag feeling like a physical blow. $1,200. He could pay a month of Raw's rent, 3 car payments, or this. He pictured Leo's face, the slight droop of his shoulders, the way he subtly hid his worn school bag. He imagined the subtle shift in Leo's posture, the way his son would walk into school, head held a fraction higher, the sheer, unearned confidence that this sleek, black leather would bestow. The choice wasn't about the bag. It was about investing in his son's fragile self-esteem. He had signed the receipt with a tremor in his hand, a mixture of fiscal terror and profound protective love. It was the purest form of sacrifice, giving up financial security for his son's emotional well-being. Then came the iPhone 17 Pro Max, a necessity. Leo had argued for his multimedia class, but Elias knew it was the social currency of his generation. He had stood in the shimmering, silent Dubai Mall, the humidity of the desert city pressing in, watching the sales associate glide the phone across the glass counter. It felt alien in his rough, calloused hand. His own phone was 3 generations old, held together by a cracked screen protector and sheer stubbornness. But Leo needed to connect, to belong. He had felt a fierce, primal need to equip his son for the battlefield of adolescence. Let them see you, Leo. Let them know you're not forgotten. The limited edition chocolates were the final personal touch. They were dark, richly spiced, and impossibly rare. They were a small, fleeting luxury, a reminder that sweetness existed even after a bitter season. He planned to share one with Leo, sitting side by side, before Leo inevitably shared the rest with his friends, cementing his brief moment of kingly generosity. He packed them all with meticulous care. The backpack nestled in its dust bag, the phone box protected by layers of soft clothes. These were not just gifts. They were his confession of love, typed in the language of the modern world. The family dinner was planned for Sunday. It was an obligation, but one Elias performed gladly for Leo's sake. His sister Clara hosted in her immaculate modern suburban home, a world away from Elias's small functional apartment. Clara had always been the stable one, the judgmental one. Her son, Jake, Leo's cousin, was a teenager built of entitlement and simmering arrogance, a living mirror of the life Elias could never provide. Elias. "Darling, you look exhausted," Clara said, kissing the air beside his cheek, her voice dripping with pity she mistook for concern. It was a long haul. "Clara!" Ah, Elias managed, forcing a smile. He was tired, bone deep, but the energy of Leo's presence was a powerful tonic. Leo, usually reserved around the extended family, kept glancing at the canvas tote bag Elias had placed discreetly by the front door. After the lasagna, too rich, too heavy, just like Clara's judgments, the moment arrived. All right. Big guy, Elias said, his voice husky with emotion, pulling the canvas bag forward. I know I was gone a long time. I missed a lot. Consider this me trying to catch up. His eyes, usually a calm, neutral gray, widened instantly. The shift in his expression from guarded indifference to pure, unguarded wonder was the only payment Elias needed. It was a sight worth 10 times the price tag. Elias presented them in order. The chocolates first, from Dubai. They are nearly impossible to find. Leo nodded solemnly, tucking the elegant box protectively under his arm. Then, the phone. The sleek box, the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Leo gasped. Not a loud, showy gasp, but a sharp intake of breath that vibrated through Elias Abadesho's own chest. What, Ed, you did know it, Leo whispered, his fingers tracing the box edge. Oh, I did, Elias confirmed, his own eyes burning with unshed pride. Now you have no excuse for late homework. Finally, the designer backpack. When Leo pulled it from the dust bag, the black leather seemed to absorb the light of the dining room. It was beautiful, understated, and terrifyingly expensive. Leo did not say a word. He simply slid his arms through the straps, letting the bag settle on his back. He stood taller. The light, intangible weight of the designer logo did exactly what Elias had hoped. It straightened his spine. Quite the bag, Elias, Clara observed from the table, her tone a careful blend of appreciation and mild disapproval. Oh, you really went all out. I didn't realize you were doing that well now. Elias ignored the barb. His focus was entirely on Leo, who was currently staring at his reflection in the hallway mirror, a small, genuine smile curving his lips. Thank you. Dad. Seriously, thank you. That was the peak of Elias Abua's 2-month effort, that perfect fleeting moment of connection and validated sacrifice. The evening wound down quickly. Elias helped Clara stack dishes, his mind already drifting to the prospect of a hot bath and 18 hours of uninterrupted sleep. Leo had taken his treasures to the living room, ostensibly to show Jake, but Elias hadn't paid much mind. He trusted Leo. More importantly, he trusted his own family. I am dead on my feet, Clara. Tell Leo I will see him tomorrow morning, Elias said, grabbing his keys. Of course, honey. Safe drive. The next morning, the exhaustion was still there, but the memory of Leo's smile had woven itself into his dreams. Elias woke up late, made coffee, and called Leo, expecting to hear the excitement still bubbling in his Sonar's voice. Leo answered, but his tone was flat. Hi, Dad, our morning champ. Did you sleep with the backpack? Elias teased, a hesitation. No. It or so not here. Elias frowned. What do you mean not here? Did you leave it at Clara Rose? Yeah, I guess. I didn't bring it back with me. A knot began to tighten in Elias's stomach. It was one thing to be careless with a cheap gym bag. This was different. The phone too, Leo? And the chocolates? Everything, Dad. I left it all in the spare room downstairs. I thought Jake put it in the car, but when we got home it was no. There, Leo. His voice was small, edged with the guilt of carelessness. But Elias heard something else beneath it. A hollowness that wasn't just about missing objects. A wave of dread, cold and immediate, washed over Elias. He dismissed it. They were at Clara's. It was family. He called his sister. Clara, did Leo leave his things at your place? The gifts I brought back? Oh yes, Elias. They're still here. Her voice was oddly smooth, almost too calm. We'll bring them by later today. Doneo in worry. No, Doneo in wait. I am coming to get them now. I need the phone set up, and I don't want those things just sitting around. Elias was already pulling his jeans on, but before he could even get his shoes laced, the buzzing of his own ancient phone demanded his attention. It was a new notification, a photo posted to Instagram by Jake, his nephew. Elias clicked the link. The photo was a high-angle selfie, taken in the driver's seat of a luxury car, Jake's usual backdrop. But it wasn't the car that made Elias stop breathing. Jake was wearing the designer backpack. The leather was unmistakable, sleek and black, strapped over Jake's smug, triumphant shoulders. The light caught the tiny silver logo, confirming the brutal reality. On the console beside Jake, barely visible, was a small, empty, gold-foiled wrapper, the distinct packaging of the Dubai chocolates. Elias stared at the image, the coffee forgotten, cooling in his hand. The betrayal hit him first as a physical illness, a sharp, crippling pain in his chest that stole his breath and made his vision blur. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition of a specific, vicious violation. He scrolled through the comments. Jake had captioned it. New travel gear secured. Shout out to the parents. Elias walked into his living room, placed the phone carefully on the sofa, and then screamed. It was a sound wrenched from the very core of his tired, sacrificial soul, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury and disbelief. It was the sound of 2 months of brutal work, and a father hour's promise all being spat upon. He did now call Clara hour's house number. He called her cell phone, his thumb shaking so violently he nearly dropped the device. Clara answered on the second ring, her voice still infuriatingly serene. Elias, what is it? You sound frantic. Do not you dare tell me you do not know what this is about, Clara. Elias snarled, pacing his small apartment like a caged animal. Jake was posting selfies with Leo's backpack. The one I worked 2 months for. The one I bought for my son. Clara paused. The silence was not confusion. It was calculation. Yes. Well, I suppose you were going to find out eventually. Find out what? That my $1,700 worth of gifts were stolen off your sofa? Were stolen? Don't now be ridiculous, Elias. We are family. Nothing was stolen. She sighed, a deep, exasperated sound, as if he were the one being difficult. Awolio gave them to Jake. The air rushed out of Elias's lungs. He leaned against the wall, fighting the sudden nausea. What? He would not. He was thrilled, Clara. He was standing taller than I've seen him in a year. No. Oh, he did. They were talking about them, and Jake, well, Hao's going to that photography camp next week, and he really needs a reliable bag for his equipment, and he just loves that style. Itao's what all the boys are carrying now. Clara spoke as though explaining a simple exchange of baseball cards. Awolio offered to let him use it, and then Jake got all excited, and honestly, Elias, Jake liked it more anyway, so I told Leo to just give him everything. Elias felt the room tilt. The words, I told Leo to just give him everything, reverberated in his mind like a hammer blow against crystal. It wasn't the loss of the gifts that made the world crumble. It was the audacious, casual cruelty of her justification. You told him? Elias's voice was barely a rasp, the full-throated fury temporarily choked by shock. Clara, those gifts represented a huge portion of my savings. They were a promise, a symbol of my presence when I couldn't be here. And you saw my Sonao moment of pride, you saw the price tag, and you instructed him to hand them over to your spoiled brat? Elias, please do not be dramatic. Ida's better this way, honestly? Her voice hardened slightly, shedding the false concern. Re always giving Leo things, compensating for not being there. It makes him flighty, Elias. He needs stability, not fleeting expensive status symbols. Jake needs that bag. He respects his things. Leo is still a child. He would not appreciate the sacrifice you made, but Jake understands quality. He would not appreciate the sacrifice you made. That sentence ripped through Elias like shrapnel. His eyes burned, not with tears of sorrow, but with the searing heat of shameful, righteous fury. He had not just lost the gifts. He had lost the belief that his own sister understood the fundamental difference between love and pity. She was not just a thief. She was a judgmental, insidious poison, undermining the very foundation of his relationship with his son. She had taken his carefully constructed apology, his physical manifestation of love, and weaponized it as proof of his instability as a parent. "You have no right," Elias finally articulated, the words laced with cold venom. "Oh, you have no right to decide what my son values, and you absolutely have no right to tell him to sacrifice his father as hard-earned gifts to validate your son's entitlement. That iPhone was for his schoolwork, Clara. The chocolates were a personal thing, and you just bundled them up and handed them over. He didn't need the Pro Max, Elias. He needs a good role model, which is why he spends so much time here. Jake is stable. Hal's going to be successful. Leo needs to learn about sharing. And frankly, he needs to learn about appreciating things that don't come from a guilt trip in Europe. I did you a favor, Elias. I taught him a lesson." The world blurred into a red haze of pure, explosive anger. The 2 months of exhaustion, the financial anxiety, the distance from his son, the pride in his purchases, the joy on Leo's face, it all funneled into a single devastating moment of emotional collapse. "Oh, you taught him nothing about sharing, Clara. You taught him that when someone bigger, richer, and louder demands what he loves, he must comply. You taught him that his father's love, purchased with blood and sweat, is disposable to you. And you used my son to pay for your own children's greed. You stripped him of his pride and his father's respect in one single, vicious, manipulative move. I didn't compensate for absence, Clara. I fulfilled a promise. The only person guilty of a psychological guilt trip is you, the one who judges my every life choice from the comfort of your borrowed wealth." Elias did not hang up. He hurled the phone across the room, watching the old, cracked device shatter against the wall, a physical manifestation of his fractured control. He stood there trembling, sweat stinging his eyes, the silence of the aftermath deafening. The gifts were a secondary loss now. The primary devastation was the realization that the woman he called his sister was capable of such profound, quiet betrayal. It took an hour for Elias to gather himself. He taped his old phone back together enough to call Leo again. He was careful this time, his voice a low, steady rumble, stripped of all fury, leaving only raw, exposed love. "Leo, come home. Now. I want to talk to you, just the two of us." Leo arrived half an hour later, his expression a careful blank mask. He sat on the edge of the sofa, avoiding eye contact. Elias sat across from him. He had to be a father now, not an enraged victim. He had to choose the long road of healing over the short fix of blame. "Oh, the gifts are gone, Leo. Oh," Elias stated gently. "Oh, I know Jake has them. I spoke to Clara." Leo nodded, still looking at the floor. "Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, ma'am, sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to be careless." Stop," Elias commanded softly. "I would not apologize for being careless." "Tell me what really happened." Leo fidgeted, picking at a loose thread on the couch. Jake, he said it looked great on him. Better than it looked on me. He asked me why I got such expensive things if I was not going to use them for real serious things like photography. He said I was just showing off. Elias leaned forward, his heart clenching with protective rage for the boy who sat before him. And what did you say?" I tried to take it back. I told him it was a gift. Then Aunt Clara walked in. She looked at the backpack, and then she looked at me, and she asked me why I was not going to share with my cousin. She said it was selfish and that it would make her proud of me if I let Jake use it. "Oh, Leo's voice cracked. She said that since you and Mom were divorced, I had to be the bigger person, and set an example for Jake. She said you wouldn't mind, because you buy things to make up for being away anyway, and Jake actually needs it for his camp." Elias closed his eyes, his breathing ragged. It was worse than he thought. Clara hadn't just told him to give it away. She had used the deep, persistent insecurity of his parents' divorce and his father's absence as leverage, turning his pride into shame. "Well, Leo, look at me!" Leo slowly raised his eyes. They were wet, shimmering with unshed tears and profound guilt. "Oh, those gifts were not a make-up for being away," Elias said firmly, his voice vibrating with conviction. They were me keeping a promise. They were me telling you in the loudest possible way that your future, your confidence, and your happiness are the only investments I will ever prioritize. The price tag means nothing to me. The look on your face when you put that bag on, that meant everything. He reached out, his rough hand cupping the back of Leo Wawa's neck. What Clara did was wrong, Leo. It was manipulative and it was cruel. She took advantage of your good heart and your sense of obligation to family. She did know why I'd want you to share. She wanted Jake to have it. Never confuse genuine generosity with forced compliance, son. That is not sharing. That is emotional theft. Leo finally broke, burying his face in his father-ow's chest, the long, thin teenage frame shaking with sobs. I felt like I had to, Dad. I felt like if I didn't I was letting you down because she said you only bought it out of guilt. Never. Ever believe that? Elias murmured, holding him tight. The embrace a desperate physical attempt to heal the psychological wound. I bought it because I love you. Full stop. No guilt. Just love. The ensuing days were marked by a cold, heavy silence with the extended family. Clara called, attempting a half-hearted apology that quickly devolved into another justification of her parenting lesson. Elias simply hung up. He was tempted to retaliate, to demand repayment, to expose Jake on social media, to cut off his sister completely. The thought of confronting her, of ripping the backpack off Jake's shoulders, was a powerful, intoxicating urge. But then he looked at Leo. Leo was quiet, subdued. He had started carrying his old, worn backpack again. He had taken his old, battered phone out of his desk drawer. The loss of the items was nothing compared to the loss of face, the public humiliation, and the subtle, corrosive damage Clara had inflicted on his belief system. Elias had a choice. He could win the battle, claim his justice, and get his money back, thereby setting off a devastating generational family feud that would force Leo to choose sides and permanently sever his already strained relationship with his cousin and aunt. Or he could make one final profound sacrifice. He chose the latter. He chose Leo's peace. He would swallow the $1,700 loss. He would swallow the rage, the betrayal, and the righteous need for vindication. He would let Clara win the material battle to ensure Leo won the emotional war. He called his lawyer not to sue Clara, but to officially update his will and guardianship papers, ensuring Leo's future was secured regardless of any external family drama. He then took a long drive to the local phone store, walked in, and bought the exact same iPhone 17 Pro Max again, on a simple payment plan. When he returned, he found Leo sitting at his desk, staring out the window. "Hey, big guy." "Oh," Elias said. Placing the new phone box on the desk, Leo's head snapped up. That no. We cannot afford that again." "Yes, we can," Elias corrected gently. Because this time, we're not paying for a backpack. We're repaying for a boundary." He sat down next to Leo. "I am not angry at you, Leo. I am proud of how you handled yourself in a difficult situation. But I need you to understand something crucial about sacrifice and love. My trip to Europe, the money for those gifts, that was my sacrifice for you. It was born of love, not guilt. What Clara demanded of you, the giving up of your gifts for Jake, that was a sacrifice to her, born of manipulation and obligation. They are not the same thing." Elias handed Leo the new phone. "I will keep this box. Keep the receipt. This phone is yours. If anyone ever makes you feel obligated to give up what is rightfully yours, you look them in the eye and you say, 'Oh, wow, no. This was earned with love and sacrifice, and it is mine.' Wow. Do you understand? Your father's love is not a guilt trip, Leo. It is your shield." Tears streamed down Leo's face, but this time they were tears of relief and understanding. He clutched the phone box like a lifeline. "I'm not calling Clara," Elias confessed, his voice heavy with the weight of his final decision. I could ruin her. I could demand payment, but that would just bring chaos into your life. And my job as your father is to give you peace. So I am sacrificing my own need for justice, my own anger and my own pride, so you don't. I have to live in a war zone." He rose, the exhaustion returning, heavier than the moment he stepped off the plane. Oh, that is the difference, son. Love sacrifices for your well-being. Manipulation sacrifices your well-being for its own gain. We lost the things, but we kept the lesson and we kept our bond. That is a trade worth more than $1,700. Elias had not just spent money in Europe. He had spent 2 months of his life. He had purchased not only a backpack and a phone, but a moment of confidence for his son. When that moment was stolen, he had to make an even greater purchase. A foundation of security, a definition of true sacrifice, and a peace built on his own swallowed anger. The true price of the gifts wasn't the thousands of dollars. It was the silence and the emotional distance he now had to maintain with his own sister. A sacrifice far more painful than any loss of wealth. He watched Leo, head now genuinely held high, unboxing the new phone. The love was pure and the sacrifice was complete. It was a victory, quiet and profound, achieved not in the Alps, but right there, in his small, functional living room. The weight of the world, for now, rested only on his own tired shoulders, leaving Leo free to grow beneath it. Weeks later, the silence between Elias and Clara was absolute. Leo occasionally went over to his aunt's, but the visits were short, formal, and always ended with him returning home quickly. The new phone had settled seamlessly into Leo's life, becoming the tool it was meant to be, no longer a symbol of status, but a functional piece of technology. Elias never saw the original backpack again in person, but he saw the occasional social media post from Jake, the sleek black leather casually tossed in a corner of a photo. Each sighting was a dull, manageable ache, no longer a searing pain. Elias had a new goal now. He was now what he's saving for gifts. He was saving for time. He found a contractor job locally, taking a slight pay cut but gaining weekends and evenings back. The material sacrifice had taught him the value of the intangible. One evening, he and Leo were watching a movie. Leo paused it, looking at his father. "Oh, Dad, you know what I still have?" Elias looked at him, curious. What is that, champ?" Leo stood up and walked to a high shelf. He returned with the small, elegant, gold-foiled box. The limited edition Dubai chocolates. "Why open the big one? And I had one piece that night," Leo explained. It was amazing. I was going to give the rest to Jake. But when Aunt Clara told me to give him the backpack, I took the small box out of the big one. I hid it in my pocket before I left. I think she only saw the big one was gone. Leo opened the small box. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue, were 3 chocolates. "Well, this one is yours," Leo said, placing the dark, fragrant piece in Elias's hand. This one is mine. And this one, Omar." He looked at the final piece, then tucked it back into the box. "This one is for next time. To remind us that some things we do not share. Some things we keep just for us." Elias looked at the chocolate in his hand, its spiced, exotic scent a memory of a distant city and a monumental sacrifice. His eyes welled up, not with sorrow, but with the quiet, profound joy of knowing that the true gift had not been the $1,000 backpack, but the boundary Leo had learned to draw, the self-respect he had reclaimed, and the love that had survived the most vicious form of manipulation. "Thank you, son," Elias whispered, tears finally falling, not in anger, but in the overwhelming gratitude of a father whose ultimate sacrifice had finally been understood. He broke off a piece of the chocolate and placed it on his tongue. It tasted like triumph. 300 words. This story was a deep dive into the emotional layers of the conflict described in the image, focusing heavily on Elias's perspective, the meaning of his sacrifice, and the ultimate parental lesson learned. I can write a brief epilogue focusing on Clara's eventual fate if you'd like to see that part of the story resolved, or perhaps a scene detailing the conversation Elias had with his ex-wife about the incident. Just let me know which direction you'd prefer to go.